I guess what I would say is like the PLA market is so dumb, right? I mean, like if you think about it, it's like I have a list. I have a list of SKUs.
Yeah.
Each SKU has a budget, and then the page loads and has a SKU in it. That's a pretty easy technical problem.
Yes, it,
right?
it is a fish in a barrel problem. Yeah.
So why do we think that the same systems that are built around PLAs are going to be good at personalized top of funnel advertising?
You're listening to the Middlemen podcast this week with Scott Messer and Tom Lemongello. We've been, as the Middlemen podcast, talking for like a year plus now about a new set of ad platforms, ad servers that are very close to the publisher, in this case, the retailer. If this is the second wave of ad platforms, what was the first like, and how did that sort of story play out? And so Ari he's the author of Yield, a great, probably the only approachable book that really gets into the detail of ad tech in this era where Google became a monopolist.
And it was great to have him on because as we were thinking through the mechanics of like, how does an ad platform or an ad server win in this war? It would be great to revisit history and see like what were some of the elements that caused Google to win the original ad server war, and do some of those elements exist in today's current war? And then it was really fun when we sort of got into the other pieces of the ad servers and what does he think of certain business elements of them, and are they interesting from a market entry opportunity, from a product development opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great to hear his perspective, both as someone who lived through this, also as an ad tech investor, thinking about, all right, what is the real opportunity for product listing ads? What is the real opportunity in the fact that currently there's not a lot of standards in retail media? What is the opportunity in areas where retail media hasn't really matured yet, like personalization of advertising? And so all of those things have been things that I've been thinking about on and off for many, many years. So it's just great to be able to riff with him about that.
Yeah. And then we also plugged into like the programmatic access of inventory and where the DSP role is in this, and like what is the ad server. I don't know if Ari like fully understood exactly the complexity that retail media networks are facing when they are running PLA campaigns and how hard it is to actually operate those. And so take a listen to the episode and see if you agree with what Ari's saying about it and how your day job is going. And it led us into a really interesting conversation about how DSPs aren't really present in the retail media ecosystem for on-site advertising, and that legacy ad servers like Google Ad Manager aren't really up to the challenge that publishers had. And so we saw some of the early iterations of retail media black box ad servers sort of encompass all this technology. And the newer generation is exposing all those endpoints and letting you bring in the decision engines and own the algorithms and build a better optimization system inside your ad server. Sort of that same logic and decision engine that lives inside of a DSP that rules the display world. Retail media networks are starting with that engine inside of their own system.
Yeah.
And we didn't talk about it, but I think it would be an interesting challenge. Like if DSPs were to come into this world, which one would do better, and how would they face off against each other?
Yeah, his lens of looking at who can be a monopolist and who can win this war. Retail continues to look very fragmented, but unless, if you just have some big super auction winner like a Google, that's one way to sort of show scale. But does it get you to the level of sophistication in the opposite idea where you get into the publisher and you're fully connected to all their pipes and all their channels? And I think that idea of, most of the companies that we've had on this podcast, the Zitchas and Vantages of the world, are trying to take things that are sometimes, very simple digital products, dumb PLAs, as Ari will call it, but also things that are analog, and also things as complicated as CTV. And so I think from that perspective, super fun conversation, and I hope you guys all enjoy it. Welcome to the Middlemen podcast. We are very excited today. Our guest is Ari Paparo of Marketecture fame. And if you don't know him from Marketecture fame, we will introduce him a little bit. This may be the only podcast out there where he needs an introduction, but in the retail world, maybe. You need to say that he came from Google, from AppNexus. He was the founder of Beeswax, which was acquired by Freewheel, but he now has created Marketecture and made me want to be a podcaster. So thank you, Ari, and thank you for joining.
Well, thanks for having me. I apologize for making you want to be a podcaster, but other than that, I'll take the props. Happy to be here. Thanks for all your support. And a strange coincidence, my first grade teacher was named Miss Middlemen, so I feel like I'm at home here.
Very good. Some people who read your book, Yield, said that there were some negative connotations for middlemen. We totally own that. We love it. So no hard feelings there. But we wanted to get started. And the reason we wanted to have you on, more than just to aggrandize our podcast, get traffic, get somebody who's an ad tech influencer on, was to talk about what we are calling the ad server wars. So Scott, do you want to talk about what we think of as the ad server wars?
I'd be happy to, Tom. Nice to see you again, Ari. The ad server wars, in short, are something that we're seeing inside commerce media, retail media start to play out, where ad servers in particular are shooting for control over a large part of the system of commerce media. When you think about on-site, off-site, in-store, and all the various places where you can activate media, the ad server becomes incredibly important. That wasn't necessarily as complex as it was for digital publishers, perhaps until like CTV really came out. And what's interesting about commerce media is that ad servers that are coming to the rescue, because Google Ad Manager really isn't a consideration for retail media or commerce media network ad servers, they're coming out of the woodwork from a bunch of different directions. And it gave us this thought that these platforms are going to start colliding with each other in sales, which we're seeing happening, and they're fighting over the same customers. Their feature sets are becoming very similar, but they have different initial capacities, whether it's traditional ad serving, machine learning, decision science, and then how do they fit into product catalogs and SKUs and things that were traditionally handled by Algolia and Bloomreach and other platforms. And then you put like this orchestration layer on top of it that we've talked about. How do you coordinate across ad servers and bring businesses together? So as we see this war happening, Tom, you and I were chatting about like who's going to win it. And, like all great things in ad tech, history repeats itself. And so we thought, who better to have us to give us a little bit of the history of ad servers and platform wars than Mr. Ari Paparo himself.
Right. Well, it's a pretty complicated subject. So, to start with, your typical retailer or commerce company might have three different technology stacks. You have the standard ad server for display-like units or video units. You might have the a SKU-oriented bidding system for PLAs, and you might have the offsite DSP. So that's a challenging problem if you have a sales force that wants to sell a single IO that has all three of those and deliver it on time, and they're even priced in totally different ways. The PLAs may be performance, the banners might be CPM, and then with a guarantee, and the DSP offsite stuff might be CPM with no guarantee or a variable amount of volume. So it's a pretty tricky business problem. So that's kind of the scope of the technical problem. But then you have to segment the market because when you say commerce media, it's just like so many different kinds of companies. A typical retailer that sells products for multiple manufacturers or brands, right? Like the Dick's Sporting Goods kind of company. And that's, you could have that in your head and kind of understand their needs. They're really different from a marketplace company like an Uber or any of the food delivery companies. DoorDash, right? So those marketplace companies are a closed loop system. Their advertisers are only going to be on their system, and they already have all the data, right? And it's just a bidding and optimization system. You don't really need ad serving. It's ad serving, as you think about it, is kind of antiquated. And then the third thing to think about, and this also kind of parallels the segmentation, is where's the demand come from? In the multi-product retailer world, you might have demand coming from an external agency, a technology like Sky, a technology like Criteo, et cetera. And getting demand is kind of the hard part. In a marketplace company, you already have the demand. Like there are already retailers and restaurants on your system, or brands on your system, and they just have to log in and start spending money. And so the integration, I think, is a lot less important. So that's a big, complex sort of way I see the landscape. Before I start saying, well, who's going to win, I start saying, well, what do the different constituencies need? If I was going to take an example, what happened in banner ad serving is that, and this is what I write about in my book, and it should be familiar to probably most listeners, which is the publisher ad server, DoubleClick DFP, which then turned into Google GAM, got a monopoly on that business because the publishers were sort of desperate for demand. And there was a enormous source of demand that no one else has access to, which was Google AdWords. So all those millions and millions of small customers logging into AdWords and putting in their credit cards were never going to buy ads on, the Washington Post unless Google enabled it. And so when the game plan for the Google that turned into the Google monopoly that I write about in my book is that they kind of hard bundled those two things, or as the legal side says, they tied them. And as a result, you couldn't leave the ad server without losing a really big chunk of your revenue, because it wasn't going to come to you through a different channel. It was just going to disappear. So that's the lens that I would look at your question. Is there a similar play that would make a retailer unable to make proper decisions, or at least just preference one tech stack enormously because it came with revenue as opposed to just coming with technology?
Yeah, and I think the answer today is no. But Tom, do you want to explain a little bit about the different demand sources? What I think we'll take direct out, where you're getting it from your JVPs, and it's just coming in direct. But what's out there for like programmatic revenue for these commerce brands?
On Middlemen, we mostly look into sort of the multi-product retailers or the multi-brand retailers. And in their situation, it's interesting. Some of the things that you said there sort of rang true, like, oh, maybe the retailer could somehow, if they own their own DSP, could be this sort of monopolist if they wanted to, because they own this measurement capability for the transaction layer that they have at their point of sale. And then, when I was working in this world at Quotient, which was originally coupons.com, the whole point of it was to join that transaction log to an identity spine, which no retailer had done yet. And so that was a world where, the targeting in retail media has always been sort of behind. It was always just the measurement that was something that you couldn't get at otherwise. And so that's sort of where I would sort of level set in terms of the commerce/retail media world. But what is out there in terms of demand, I think, historically you see things like the rise originally of Triad, which was all about, just supporting the Walmart demand. Then you had somebody like Criteo come in and say, once retargeting became sort of an albatross for them, we're going to really lean into our Hook Logic acquisition and do performance-based CPC auction model for sponsored listings or product listing ads, as you mentioned. And so that was the beginning of it, but they were very much a network model. Yeah. And that's where some of the retailers now are moving off into these newer ad servers that unbundle the demand and the supply pipes. But we're seeing, from Scott's discussion, that there's orchestrators coming in to try to tie it all together again. And so there are many fronts to this battle.
There are a couple of interesting other dimensions here, which is first, the lack of standardization. So at the SKU level, the SKUs on Dick's Sporting Goods aren't at Kroger's. Like most of them are not. So there's no network effect of having those two retailers in the network together. There's a little, obviously. Yeah, but they both sell batteries. They both sell like stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think Criteo is big on like a unified product catalog and the idea of looking at it across some of the retailers. They had like 225 retailers. But yes, you're right. There's definitely different. The Venn diagrams are not circles.
No, I mean, but they're really far from circles, right? So you go by vertical and there's no commonality other than a couple of commodities. So like the only category that has scale is grocery. in my opinion. Any other category has like a very limited number of head-to-head competitors who have no interest in cooperating. And then grocery is regional and has a lot of SKUs. So grocery is kind of like the perfect example where it should be able to have some network effects, and there would be a value add both to the buyers and the sellers of having a network. In other areas, you may be talking about just like a net negative where, like, once again, if we do Dick's Sporting Goods, they came to mind. Like, you have a sporting good manufacturer, probably Dick's is a pretty important retailer to them. They're willing to do integrate into whatever sporting API they have. There's not much benefit to having the same system for that and other retailers. Like, there aren't that many retailers. There's, Walmart, a couple of others. As a buyer, why pay, some significant percentage of your spend to an optimizer? The other question, and I think this is very much what I would be thinking about if I was in this business, because I'm not really, is, how much optimization is there? Because it doesn't feel like there's a lot of optimization. It feels like you match the SKU and you show the PLA, and if your budget runs out, you stop.
Well, I mean, I think this is another big question. The omni-channel area is very different in this world where, and I think this ties very well to the discussions in ad tech, CTV is starting to become a really big part of retail media. And it wasn't really for the sort of the publishers of the world. There were missing pieces of the ad tech there where people weren't logged in both systems. And it seems like CTV is a chocolate and peanut butter in retail media. But that plus the in-store activation plus the fact that you have the user's identity, there's so many more variables in retail media. Whether or not they're being used effectively, doesn't that create more opportunity, or is it you're saying you're still in a sort of low optimization? It's
a good question. So I'll try to address your points one at a time. So the CTV to retail opportunity question is it just going to belong to Amazon and Walmart? Like, is there a play for, once again, Dick's Sporting Goods and CTV? Or it would basically have to be audience extension, and then who's taking the risk on buying that CTV ad that features the product that's on there? Whereas Amazon, with their media properties, can take that risk and has the measurement. Second point is personalization. There, to my understanding, there's virtually no personalization going on in the entire retail media world. It's almost entirely SKU based and context based. I think I talked to a couple of the buy side tools. I won't say who, and they don't support cookies or IDs at all. Like, it's just not part of the stack.
I think that they haven't had to date, and it was sort of the dirty secret that personalization wasn't necessary because you were getting the money anyway. But it is interesting talking to the retailers now, guys like Bobby Watts at Ahold, who are saying, they just took their publisher ad server in-house.
Yeah.
And they were saying, we're looking at doing predictive audiences. And I was like, good job, guys. Like, I thought you would have been afraid of that.
I guess what I would say is, like, the PLA market is so dumb, right? I mean, like, think about it. It's like I have a list of SKUs. Yeah. Each SKU has a budget, and then the page loads and has a SKU in it. That's a pretty easy technical problem.
Yes, it is a fish in a barrel problem.
So why do we think that the same systems that are built around PLAs are going to be good at personalized top-of-funnel advertising anywhere? CTV, website, mobile, push notifications. The answer is it's not. They have nothing in common.
Yeah, I think the ad servers who are going to do well in this world are ones that can go beyond just the simple PLA ads.
Well, if there is such a thing as an ad server in any of these worlds.
Well,
right?
It's an interesting question. Like, I don't know if DSPs are up to the job that on-site ad servers could do. Because as dumb as that PLA ad is, like, looking up the SKU and understanding the contextual nature of it is actually like a very personal thing to that website, and is best served by the ad server, which is plugged into the publisher page and sort of runs its own optimization algorithms.
Yeah.
And like a DSP isn't really ready to do that. They can say, like, yes, I know that SKU and I want to place an ad for it, but how long will it take them to get to the point where they're buying PLAs in the same way they're thinking about buying display ads across the open web? And I think that's really far away.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think that none of the legacy ad server or ad tech stack, including DSPs, are really oriented towards the SKU use case. Ad servers are used to contextual targeting, where you have millions, sort of an infinite number of web pages, but they're boiled down to like 10,000 key values. And there's no such thing in the ad server world as like a similarity key value. Like, hey, this is about football, so I should also serve rugby ads. That doesn't exist. You can't do that easily. And DSPs are also DSPs have a better ability to sort of have an infinite catalog, but they require a lot of custom algos to do anything like similarity scores.
You actually built a company on custom algos, isn't that right?
Yeah, so I built Beeswax, and the unique selling prop of Beeswax as a DSP was, among other things, that you could have very customized algos that you could write in code and put in your own server. So in our world, we would say, well, pass in a variable, which in the web is usually the URL. And then you can do whatever lookups and calculation and give us back either a score or matching creative or whatever it is. But still, at the scale of a large retailer, some of that breaks down and doesn't work very well. And it's not really suited for purpose. You'd probably have to build some new tech to really make that work.
And that's what I think the new ad servers are. They've moved that sort of decision logic and the algorithm into the ad server, where like it doesn't really exist in Google Ad Manager. Google Ad Manager just runs one big auction and it does some campaign flighting. This new crop of ad servers that are competing have taken that decision engine and they store the algorithms and the models inside of their own systems, so that they're doing exactly that. For the
Who are we talking about here? Are we talking about like Kevel, Moloko? Like what are we talking about here?
We've promised not to name names in this episode, but you're more than welcome to continue repeating them.
I don't have a long list, but
it'll be Topsort, Cody, Zitcha, Moloko, as you said, Kevel.
Yeah,
it's a small list that is growing, and I think we're seeing more companies with their product in one corner start to move into becoming an ad server, because the flighting part is really easy, campaign management stuff. And then it's about, do you have a secret sauce that helps power these retail media networks? And they all kind of think that they do.
Yeah. So my understanding is, and maybe you guys certainly know better than I do, is like Moloka's approach is like a network model. They're like, AdSense, AdWords for retail, where you just like put it all in one system and the best ad shows. Whereas like Kevel is like more like a DFP approach, where they have APIs for building an ad server.
I think that's right. I think, from the Moloko episode that we just had a few weeks ago, John Flugstad talked us through the idea of actually looking at consumer journeys. And so taking some of those types of behaviors, I don't know if it also includes behavioral stuff that people are doing elsewhere. But yeah, generally trying to do things that would potentially enable personalization. So directly to your point, like, retail media isn't doing what it needs to do. And honestly, I've known that from the beginning. We had such an easy job because it was captive audiences and captive brand budgets. But moving, if the pressure is on to make retail media all media, they're going to have to go through all this same stuff. And I think the questions that we would have for you: did Google get to a place where they innovated enough to be a monopolist, but the publishers weren't requesting anything more from them to innovate anymore?
Well, yeah. So Google hit a point in its journey where it became impossible to switch off of the ad server. Right. And this was found in court. There was evidence they had a churn rate of under 5%, which is like crazy for a software company.
Close to like 1%.
Yeah,
I think more companies went out of business to leave Google than actually left Google by choice.
Exactly. The quality of GAM as an ad server versus the needs of the marketplace is an unclear question, because if you talk to publishers, of course, they love complaining about it. But it's not clear that if there was a competitive environment, that there would be better options, probably cheaper options, especially on the ad exchange side. They took a pretty high take rate. But on a feature for feature basis, GAM is pretty comprehensive. So there's a lot of sour grapes out there. So it's unclear really where we ended up in that environment. But I think it is it is very clear that the retail media opportunity passed by Google. I mean, Google Shopping is obviously a big business. I don't understand it. I don't know who uses it, but it exists and is big. But they're not. They're not really. They're not in the business we're talking about. They're not buying feed ads on other retailers using AdWords, which would seem like a huge opportunity for them. They're not powering feed ads on retailers.
Yeah, I mean, they sat next to me. They came into our meetings at Albertsons because GAM existed at Albertsons, and they would try to unseat us as Quotient. And they showed Albertsons their PLA ads, but that was it, and wasn't enough.
And their PLA ads, it was not really a SaaS offering, right? It would be like just a a way to make money. So that's interesting. I mean, Facebook's also not in this business, despite having the feeds and the catalogs in their system and using them for ads. They don't work on third-party sites, to my knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, the only way I see this happening is somebody buys a transaction engine. So it would have to be like Facebook buying Shopify or something like that. I don't know.
It's Shopify is obviously a huge opportunity here. So does PayPal. So does Amazon. In all three cases, though, they have I'll step back and say, why was Google able to run the play and display ads then Facebook didn't? And that I talk about that in the book. But the main reason, the easy reason, is that Facebook had a ton of O&O, and they didn't need the network play that Google did. So Google, in history, before YouTube became what YouTube is, just had no O&O, right? They had tons of ad demand, and they had tons of search supply, but they had no display and no video. So the network play, meaning aggregating many, many publishers, giving them tech, et cetera, was the way to monetize. In the retail media world, I think, or in this related world, catalog ads, retail media, whatever, everyone has a lot of O&O. At least by everyone, I'm saying Facebook obviously not lacking for opportunities to sell ads, Amazon, of course, etc. So why would you take lower margin, more complicated, annoying, potentially conflicted clients?
No, it makes sense. Yeah. Why would you have all these, like the concept of a joint business plan where you're annually planning with your brands? Like, why do all that if you don't need to?
Yeah. Whereas if you're a startup, if you're an ad server company or a DSP type company, this is a huge opportunity. And it's kind of surprising more haven't, invested here. I think the PLA thing kind of turned a lot of people off because the history of search engine marketing ended poorly, where like the two leaders, Marin and Kenshu, both basically, Kenshu didn't go out of business, they turned into Sky, but they certainly abandoned the search side of things. Turned out to be a terrible business. So PLAs, if you squint right, looks a lot like SEM. And if I was an executive at a company, let's say the Trade Desk 5 years ago, and someone said we should really be bidding on PLAs, I would say, tell me why that's not going to be a very low margin business where we are squeezed out by the retailers. And I don't have a good answer to that.
No, but that's good context for understanding. I've been racking my head. Why isn't Bloomreach and Kenshu, Sky, why aren't those guys coming in and just offering what Criteo offers? And that was
why aren't they an ad server? Which is why we think they probably are, or they should, or they're going to listen to this and say, "Gee, maybe that's a good idea."
When you say ad server,
we already thought of that.
I think it's probably helpful to explain what you guys mean. You're saying a sell side solution, a software product you would sell to retailers to enable ads. That's the opportunity that you're trying to push on.
Yeah, but it might fall apart in minutes because we're moving to a world where longer form context kills the keyword as the linchpin of advertising there. So
sure.
I don't know if I would have suggested it today. I would have suggested it 2 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. But.
Yeah. It is an interesting question about like if I'm shopping on OpenAI, ChatGPT, and the feed of products is coming from that retailer, there's not as much of an advertising opportunity to provide a different product or to suggest products.
I want to click into this transparency thing real quick here. I'm going to take this long segue. Something we say on this show, and I repeat from an Ari Paparo quote, is that log files are a constitutional right. And surprisingly, these retail media networks aren't always handing out their log files. And I think that I don't know if all the brands understand what it means to have access to log files and what they could be doing with them and how they can hold their retail media networks accountable to them. So I'd first like you to do is explain, what do you mean when you say log files are a constitutional right?
Yeah, let's be fair. Let's explain it to me because I think Scott gets it. I don't.
Well, okay, so fundamentally, if you're bidding for a piece of inventory from a publisher and the only thing you get is the aggregated data, meaning I spent $100, these are the dates, these are some additional variables. It's very, first of all, it's very hard to forensically tell if that's true. So there's a true or false or fraudulent nature of the inventory. What was the exact page? When did it show, et cetera? You really can't tell when you just get the aggregate data. And secondly, you can't really tell if the price was right. And the argument, some people make the argument, well, you were willing to pay, so you paid, and who cares about where the price is? But that's not really a fair point of view in the complex display and video advertising world where there are multiple middlemen and you may not be 100% clear which middlemen you went through and what they paid, and there's a lot of opportunity for optimization. There's a lot of opportunity for perverse incentives from the people on the chain, including the vendor that you're working with. You're working with the DSP. They might be manipulating your bids to go through a path that gives them kickbacks, all these sort of things. And the easiest and best way to solve all of these problems is to get the raw log files and have an ongoing analysis that tells you when things look a little funny. And if you don't have the log files, you could almost be sure something funny is happening. Now, in retail media, it may be less important because the opportunities for fraud, the opportunities for take manipulation are lessened because there's less of a supply path. Obviously, I would still want it. But especially if I'm only one hopping, if I'm like basically buying ads on a given retailer and I already sell products on that retailer, I don't really need that much logging. I need to know what I paid and how many people bought something.
What about when they do off-network audience extension for you?
Yeah, off network, I would demand it because I don't know where I would want, at the very minimum, you need to know the full URLs of where your ad served. That's like a very important thing to have, or else you're guaranteed to be showing your ads in bad places.
This brings up an interesting question. Tom, if you had to guess, like, how many brands do you think look at anything beyond aggregated reporting with their retail media networks, on-site and off-site?
I think it's only the top brands that are spending the multiple millions on these retailers.
They already have like big, large established media orgs that are used to crunching this.
Yeah, I mean, I think ones that have brought in agencies obviously are, they have center of excellence around blacklist, whitelist, that whole game of managing what level of quality can we get by proxy.
Yeah, and then second question, how many brands do you think ask the retail media network what the off-network stack looks like, and like what DSP are they using and how are they going to market to buy those things? Do you think they ever look at it, or they just say like, okay, let's run the money?
Actually, I think it was very easy to know back in the day when I was working on it because there was always one DSP. Now it's gotten more complicated. So somebody like a Costco may have like 5, 6, 7 DSPs going on. So they might not know.
Yeah, I guess I'd ask why they care, on the stack. I care about the sites. I don't really care about the margin if we're using this as a performance metric, but I care about the sites and the quality a lot.
Yeah, and to be fair, the retailer is bringing their own data margin in here, and so the quality of the site usually suffers unless there's some more transparency. So I think that's fair.
It's almost axiomatic that if someone's not looking at the site list is going to be bad.
Yeah, you can get away with it. Yeah.
It kind of begs the question about whether why are we doing this? Like, why is audience extension through retail media even a thing?
Right. I mean, for me, if it went all CTV, I'd be happier because
if they owned it. Like I tweeted this like a week ago when I was watching Thursday Night Football on Amazon, and just like every single ad had a call to action, and I just love that because it's Amazon's media, Amazon's DSP, Amazon's data. I love that. That's a great use of retail media, especially if it's priced on performance in some way, which it probably isn't, but especially if it is. But like compare that to like, you know, some your retailer, you work with 10 retailers and one of them has a Trade Desk account and is showing your banner ads to random people. And like you have to figure out if it was actually worth it or if it was duplicated against your Criteo and your other stuff. It's like,
so do we need to revise Terry's idea about who the Trade Desk should buy? They should be buying a retailer? I mean, what, you know?
You just did a pretty big U-turn on me there. So do you want to explain to your audience what you're talking about, or do they know?
Well, they might know if they watch the Moloko episode. We in homage to you guys, we stole your clip of Terry Kawaja and Marketecture saying that that the Trade Desk should buy Moloko.
Right.
And so that's, you know, getting into sort of performance.
Yeah.
But it sounds like what would be more interesting is getting them on TV, which is, you know, my wife is very upset that she's seeing so many Trade Desk ads on Hulu these days.
I see a lot of Trade Desk ads. I see a lot of ads for all kinds of things. Well,
the catch up, it's really getting me on the heartstrings. I don't know.
I think there's two different things when we talk about the Trade Desk, which is first, should they be in more performance settings? And secondly, the channel. So on the performance side, I think it's a fair criticism that the Trade Desk is not the best cutting edge performance company out there. I don't know how well they perform on ordinary campaigns, but it's not what they're known for in the way that like Moloko or AppLovin or TV Scientific are known for that. So that would be clearly an area I would look if I was them. And the second question is by channel. You know, CTV performance is different from, you know, retail media performance. So those are all good options. I wouldn't say not to do Moloko. I think Moloko is a great company.
But I think to answer the obvious question you asked was, why are we doing it? And there's not enough O&O inventory to scale massive media budgets across these retailers.
Yeah. Well, that's why retailers want to do it. But I'm asking why should. Okay, so let's just do a thought experiment, right? Which is, and the example I gave, I'm a brand. I sell across 10 retailers. I also buy media myself. And so the retailer comes to me and says, in addition to the PLAs, which we know are great, we're going to take some of your budget and buy banner ads for you across the internet using our data. Should I do it or not as a brand? The positive is it's some signal I don't have otherwise, right? That's the main positive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the negative has been that if everything's done on ROAS or iROAS, then those banners, you know, unless they're on a mobile device, are hard. It's hard to tie that in enough of a cost-effective way to ROAS, and so that's been challenging, and that was the pain point that we had.
Yeah, so you're basically you're expecting the user to see a banner ad for like some mayonnaise and click on it, and then go back to the retailer where they abandoned mayonnaise from the shopping cart and then buy some mayonnaise.
Yeah, well, the truth was, and this was sort of the innovation, which was just the exposure was enough if you had a transaction log, and so you didn't have to click. But you never got to a place, and this is why I got excited about attention companies and things, but how do you level the playing field where it's not just the cheapest inventory that performs the best? So I think this comes back to the Google discussion, which was search ads were so good, so easy to measure, so easy to take credit. The next level up in retail media for us was mobile ads. But unless you level the playing field of measurement, so that it doesn't always, you know, award the sale to the last click. You know, you're right. It doesn't make sense to do audience extension because you can't measure it well enough.
And you're really, if it's a call to action of go back to the retailer, you're really just subsidizing their retargeting.
Not going to argue with you there.
This
is where the two goals of the retailer and the brand. This is what they talk about in their joint planning sessions, which is, you know, the retailer obviously wants category sales. They don't really care about brand sales.
Yeah.
The brand wants brand sales, but if they both are pushing traffic, then they hopefully both win. But you know, it's not as strong an argument as just a brand centric argument.
Right. Yeah. Interesting conversation. I do wonder. I mean, obviously, there's some value there. If I was a brand, I would say, like, get me people who you think would buy mayonnaise but don't currently buy mayonnaise. I don't want to spend any money on my own customers.
Yep. No, I think that's fair. And that's sort of the predictive audience concept. I mean, now that there are GLP-1s, you can't target those people from 2-year-old audiences. And actually, this might be a good time to ask you the ad CP question.
And so you went from GLP-1 to ad CP in one sentence. That's like that.
You like my jumps.
That's a very flexible brain you've got right there.
Well, I mean, the reasoning is that the GLP-1 customer. So to give you some context, in retail media, pretty stale audiences up till now. Basically, it was look for category buyers or brand buyers.
Right.
Those audiences might be 3, 6 months, even 2 years old. But you can't do that if it's a GLP-1 product that, like somebody's buying a protein yogurt or something like that. They weren't doing that before. So how do you predictively find those people and find the things that they might want to buy? Now, maybe you don't even know if they're a GLP-1 user, but how do you predict the trends of those new products and categories?
Are you hearing this from actual customers of yours, that they're seeing like drop off in effectiveness of like high fat foods and increases of like high protein foods and things like that?
I mean, that's what the retailers were talking about all grocery shop with me. But
yeah. Right. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
and then the reason I jumped to ad CP was that, you had an interest. I mean, the only thing that I've read on the internet that gave me sort of a feel for what ad CP could do was the idea that deal IDs were a little stale too. They were prepackaged. But potentially using ad CP, you can get to real-time understanding of audiences.
Yeah. I think ad CP is really a protocol for letting agents interrogate and discover audiences and potentially transact them. And so in the world of retail media, trying to bring it to that, you could imagine that a retailer might open up an MCP server that lets the buyer mix and match and discover based on segments, and say, like, find me. Let's do the GLP example. Find me people who were buying lots of fatty foods a year ago and aren't anymore. Maybe. I'm just kind of speculating.
Sure.
And you could do that in a query environment or a ad ops environment, but the ability to do it arm's length is the benefit of ad CP. But you still have to have your data. AI doesn't solve the problem of having the data and making sense of the data. It just enables the discovery once the segments have been made. Right. And it, to some extent, de-taxonomizes it. So instead of like a hierarchical approach where, you have Oreo buyers underneath, cookie buyers underneath, whatever.
Yeah.
You might be able to ask the AI unstructured questions like the one I gave, or other ones like that, which is exciting. But once again, you need a lot of data. You need to have it organized before any of this works.
Yeah, and that organization, that taxonification is not conducive to this, because you're basically saying, let me cherry pick, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a more in retail media. I'm talking totally off the top of my head here. I think there's a bigger opportunity in AI for changing the ads themselves and making the experience better than targeting.
Yeah.
I'm a small investor in Marpipe, which is a company that does like retail feed enhancements using AI, make them prettier, offer different options. I think that's a very promising direction for us all to go. And PLAs just suck. They just look bad. They're confusing.
Is that a personalization opportunity, or is that contextual, or is that personalized based to the user?
Those are all options. I won't speak for Marpipe specifically, but if you just go from the feed that you have lying around your CMS to a feed that's going to work and perform in ad environments, there's some changes you need to make in terms of the quality of the photos, the text messages, seasonality, put a little Christmas tree behind things, stuff like that AI can do at scale.
So in honor of the platform war premise here, and we'll just use this Marpipe as an example if you want, but when do they come up and they say, actually, we could be your entire ad server?
Once again, I'm not sure we need an ad server. So, you guys are really stuck on this ad server thing. Buy side doesn't need an ad server at all, right? They just need some metrics and some reporting and maybe log file analysis. Sell side needs a lot of different things, none of which really are an ad server. They need some sort of like, sell side really needs to understand its data, segment users, enable usage of that data in various places. The PLA thing is,
that's what an ad server
maybe
does for
maybe
side.
not if they don't control the media, or if the media is limited.
Yeah.
Well, I think maybe that's where we call it, because this was a great discussion. I don't know how to push it any further without saying that I have a flexible brain or falling afoul of Ari's thought processes. So, but I really appreciate, this was a great discussion. I think we're going to have a lot of fun putting this out into our audience, and hopefully we'll get some feedback of we need to rename our series. We're up for that.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a great conversation.
All right.
Thanks, Ari.